Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Thursday, sunny, summery morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. Actually, a lot to be speaking about today as Bitcoin does hit the short-term, medium-term time frame targets to the downside. But the question is, how does this kind of play into the higher-term time frame picture? And other than that, yeah, I guess we had a nice fun Instagram live earlier with the man Jason Pizzino, and I've actually been uploading a lot of content there as well, trading related and also not trading related, so may or may not be for you, but if you are interested, there is a link in the description below. Please be aware that there are many scammers on Instagram, as YouTube as well, and if you're not getting messages, which you probably won't get messages from the account that is in the link in the description below, then it ain't me, and I can assure you that it's not going to end well. Other than that, I wanted to point out for the first time actually a new feature on the Krown trading application here, which is a bit of voting and predictions, which we're going to be doing very, very frequently on a daily basis. Have a little bit of fun with it. Is $17,500 US the bottom for Bitcoin? Well, it might be a bottom for Bitcoin, but perhaps not the macro bottom for Bitcoin. I'm going to vote no in this case, and actually looks like many people agree, so who knows what that means, and we'll be following up on these on an actual daily basis, so I would encourage you to check that out. I will actually even have some games around it too, which would be rather fun. Anyways, with that in mind, let's just jump into the price action right now. I want to follow up on yesterday's short-term time frame analysis, of which we were looking for a move to the bottom side of the range based off of the many drives of hidden bearish divergence all the way up to a 12-hour. I believe that was present on this chart over here, and yes, indeed it was. Or as one of these charts, well, all of these charts basically have the same thing. 12-hour had hidden bearish divergence going back from our highs from the 15th of June, and then obviously the 6-hour and the 4-hour also printing similar sort of reads right here on a rejection of the 50 line. So in this case, what essentially does that mean is we're pretty much at the bottom of the range already, with Bitcoin on CME just trading down below about 19,300. I did say perhaps a low of about 19.1 or so before a little bit of a short-term bounce, but ultimately I am starting to look at this as likely to get a little bit more continuation. We will follow up on how this kind of fits in the higher term time frame picture, as that is going to be obviously postponed until the shorter term time frame reads are resolved. But in this case, we are starting to see volatility expand on the 12-hour time frame, a rather powerful time frame off, lows, essentially like the lowest of the lows, literally below about 1 percentile. So I do believe that this move has a little bit more legs, especially with 12-hour RSI just once again breaking back down below that exponential, likely going to come back down somewhere right around here, set up for a little bit of bullish evidence, and then initiate a short-term bounce, or a medium-term bounce in this case actually. Same thing on the 4-hour, same thing on the 6-hour. It's all the same look essentially. So other than that, I did want to point out that we actually did have a formation here, or we do have a formation here. I believe I pointed this out over the weekend, or maybe end of last week, when I was actually looking a little bit more immediately for that downside move. Looks like that got kind of pushed back to this week here. Fair enough. Timing never been my forte, nor do I think it really needs to be. Price action and price action level is going to be the most important thing for kind of judging that, at least in the way that I do things. Perhaps there's other people out there who can do it well with timing, but that's not me. Anyways, in this case, we did have a declining trend line going on right here, governing the lower highs, same lows, of course, as well on CME. So what does that essentially mean? It essentially means a descending triangle that does have an implied target or a measured move, whatever you want to call it, which is actually pointed all the way down to low $18,000 region. Now I am, insinuating that this will very likely break. I think it's quite likely here, to be fair, as we do kind of diddle. That's not the right word, not the right word in this case, but break below the bottom side of this structure. Now that's going to be combined not just with all those hidden bearish divergence drives, not just with the very low BBWP that we see on the 12-hour over here entering into an expansion phase, but also 12-hour stochastic momentum and lower term timeframes are turning down alongside that turn up of volatility. So volatility is going up, indicating expansion on the medium and lower term timeframes, and momentum is going down on the medium term and lower term timeframes right here as well. So this is the 12-hour. The pivot is at 20,900. 6-hour pivot is 19,500, so certainly more aggressive in that case. 4-hour is showing 19.5 as well, so coming up in a few places here. 3-hour going to be showing 19.5, what do you know? And then hourly is going to be showing 19.7 essentially. So we see a lot of things kind of in the middle of the $19,000 region or so. Can Bitcoin have a bit of a short-term bounce off the, off like low $19,000? Definitely possible, but barring any sort of a heroic reclaim by midday back above about 19.5, I would be looking for this one to topple on and trade a little bit lower, perhaps even as low as the measured move in this case, which would actually be well close to the low $18,000 regions. I would actually have more or less a range here between about 18.5 and low 18, something like this, as I wouldn't want to get too aggressive. The reason why I wouldn't want to get too aggressive is based off of the higher term time frame look that we've been looking at for a long time here now. That's going to be back on this chart over here, and that is going to be due to the daily stochastic momentum oscillator, of which, yes, it is still downside angled, and as long as it's downside angled, pressure remains to the downside. And obviously that criteria was fulfilled yet again yesterday at the I think it was like 20,300 level. That pivot has now moved down to 20,000 even or so. So as long as Bitcoin is below 20,000 bucks, yes, this is not viable, not playable, not in any way, shape, or form relevant. But here's the thing. At some point, yes, it's very likely does line up for a nice corrective bounce, and probably going to come from lower now, which is going to massively change the upside targets, which is why it's so important to be waiting for something like this if you are going to be looking at this as a source of edge, or with any sorts of edge really. But in this case, what essentially is the signal? The signal is anytime that we have seen daily stochastic momentum on CME specifically come down to this 9 read here on this green horizontal bar. The bounce from that has been, quite epic, let's say, over the 3-4 year history of CME. Now, I've gone ahead and backtested, or not backtested, but analyzed all of these similar levels, of which there are 7, and found that the average bounce from them was about just under 31% done over the course of just over 14 days. So again, this signal not viable right now, but the next time that it does cross the upside, which potentially could be today if Bitcoin were to reclaim 20,000 bucks. I think it's a little bit less likely. Probably happens maybe Friday, maybe early next week. Again, getting postponed here, but depends, where that actually does happen from. If it were to happen from, let's say, the low 18s, I think it's rather interesting to kind of forecast what does 30% look like. Literally just brings Bitcoin back up to the daily range highs, 23,300 to 23,500, which would be rather interesting. So I actually do kind of like that area, to be fair. And of course, if it were to happen from here, then that would imply that Bitcoin reclaims 20,000 bucks by end of day. And that would, again, put it obviously much higher, closer to like the mid 20s, about 25 to 26,000 bucks. I think that's obviously less likely based off of yesterday's and this morning's analysis. So with all of that in mind, probably does trade a little bit lower first, probably a bit of a short term, like very short term time frame bounce, somewhere around low 19s. And then assuming that we do get continuation, well, at that point, probably somewhere between 18.5 to 18,000 bucks. That's the real area though, where I would express caution from getting super bearish, because of what we just spoke about right there. And then also, you're probably going to see just a lot of people get like panicky, I guess, again, because Bitcoin's coming back down to basically the lows. And that's typically when you should panic. And also, we're going to see traditional markets do something relatively similar as well right here. We didn't cover this yesterday nor the day before, but we did talk about it over the weekend on the macro scale. And what do you know? Another drive of hidden bearish divergence. This is actually a bit of a phantom drive right there, but it's always really profound to me that it actually does play out. And well, there we go. So in this case, probably looking for another retest around these lows. Bitcoin probably comes back down somewhere reasonably close to the lows, and perhaps another bounce off of that higher term time frame. So again, we're getting into some sticky regions for even NASDAQ, but that doesn't mean that we can't come back down and retest lows. In fact, I think that's rather likely, but I wouldn't be looking for like a full-on massive mega break below them. So Bitcoin, that probably equates to like 18,000 bucks. At some point, definitely possible, maybe later down the road, if I had to guess, maybe like around end of summer, but again, timing, not something that I can do. And then of course we have the most important thing to be aware of right now. What's the most important thing to be aware of? Well, that is going to be the semi-annual close, the 6-month time frame. That's a bearish engulfing on NASDAQ as we enter into the last day of trading for the month and for the semi-annual as well. Same thing on SPY. That's great. That's really nice. And then of course we go over here to Dixie. It is quite literally the opposite. It is a trending breakout as we've been looking at for like a year now, and I still stick with my targets of minimum 110, probably way more than that. I think 120 is actually quite reasonable in the next year, maybe 2 years, something like that, which probably also puts downside pressure on general markets. So in the short term, again, maybe one more drive towards the current lows, probably tries for a little bit of a short-term bounce, kind of see it, I guess, a little bit over here. But there are several indications that you say to extend targets lower now. So that is kind of how I'm pivoting myself. And essentially what I'm looking at for right here, I would just, again, express caution around 18-ish, give or take. because I don't think that we're going to see a full-on meltdown exactly from here. I think it's more likely to bounce first and then meltdown later after, with everyone's, speaking about the lows being in yet again. Other than that, what else do we have? I already showed my Instagram, showed the voting. What about Bybit? Yeah, Bybit's been having a good deal going on recently. This is something that I'm actually like quite happy to promote because I think it's extremely valuable to myself, and I imagine it's valuable to other people out there as well. But not only do they have their deposit bonus, which is great, but what they have that I think is really, really amazing actually is a 30 days with no maker fees. No maker fees, meaning that you don't pay any fees on limit orders, assuming that you don't get, filled at market, obviously, with a limit order, but assuming that you use a limit order post only, yes, no fees with that. And that, all you have to do is use my affiliate link in the description below. Of course, you don't have to use it, but then it won't come with that reduction. So cool. I think that's a good place to leave it off. I'll be signing off now. We'll be back on tomorrow for Friday. With that said, wishing you well as always. Take care and see you hopefully soon.